The desert stretches endlessly, an ocean of gold and ochre under a sky that burns like molten fire. Wind sweeps over the dunes, sculpting them with invisible hands, carrying whispers of centuries past. The footsteps of prophets, poets, and warriors whose stories have faded into sand. On a solitary ridge, a lone horseman emerges, his white robes flapping in the wind, dust swirling at his feet. His eyes, dark and unwavering, scan the horizon with the patience of 1,000 years. This is Omar Mukhtar, a man who will become legend, a teacher, a leader, a shepherd of a people on the brink of annihilation. The sun breaks through the haze, casting long, trembling shadows. In the distance, faint echoes of Italian engines hum across the sand. The desert holds its breath. Welcome to Ancient Historian's Voyage. Together, we'll step into an age where courage met destiny and rebellion became legend. Omar Mukhtar was not always a warrior. Before the rifles and planes, he was a teacher, a man devoted to faith and learning. In the quiet villages of Cyrenaica, he walked among children, teaching the words of God, the poetry of the desert, the strength of knowledge. His presence was gentle, commanding respect without raising a hand. Parents would bring their children to him, and the lessons extended beyond reading and writing. He taught courage, morality, and dignity, virtues that would prepare a nation for resistance. But the peace of Cyrenaica was fragile. The Italian Empire arrived like a storm, armed with steel and arrogance, crushing homes, scattering families, turning the desert into a battlefield. And Omar knew that teaching alone would not save his people. Rumors of oppression spread like wildfire. The Italian occupiers crushed resistance with swift brutality. Villages burned, wells poisoned, livestock slaughtered. Yet the people refused to kneel. Omar walked among the tribes, speaking quietly, words infused with faith and courage. His voice carried across valleys and wadis, a promise. Freedom is not a dream, it is a right. Slowly, scattered tribes began to gather beneath his banner. Young men with fire in their eyes. Old men, wary but hopeful. Women praying for courage in the dark. Together, they would become a force the Italians could not imagine. In the shadowed canyons of Omar Mukhtar, the lion of the desert prepared to rise. The first skirmish comes at dawn. Italian convoys crawl over sand like metallic beasts, unaware of the shadows that watch from ridges. Omar's men lie hidden among rocks and dunes, rifles poised. The desert hums with anticipation. Every heartbeat, every grain of sand seems to lean toward him. And then, like lightning, the ambush strikes. Smoke, gunfire, dust. The desert becomes a theater of war. Omar rides through the chaos, guiding his men, voice calm yet commanding. As though he were part of the wind itself. Victory is fleeting, but hope ignites. Omar walks among his fighters afterward, patting young men on shoulders, eyes shining with pride and resolve. They have learned the desert, learned patience, and learned that courage can be sharper than rifles. Every child in Cyrenaica whispers his name, the Lion of the Desert. He looks across the horizon, understanding that this is only the beginning. The storm is rising, and with it, the test of their faith. As night falls, the desert hums with life. Soft prayers, flickering campfires, the whisper of the wind through palms and rocks. Omar kneels alone, fingers sifting through sand, whispering a quiet prayer for the fallen, for the yet to come. Above him, stars pierce the black sky like diamonds. He sees not fear, but possibility. The desert, eternal and unforgiving, will not bend to men, but it carries the courage of those willing to fight. Dawn paints the desert in shades of rose and gold. Omar Mukhtar rides among his growing band of fighters, their eyes bright with purpose, their hands steady with newly learned courage. Each man carries not only a rifle, but a story. Sons lost, families displaced, villages destroyed. Omar listens to them, nodding, his face calm, but his mind sharp as desert rock. "We fight not for hatred, but for freedom," he whispers. His words ripple through the camp like the first waves of a gathering storm. The desert becomes their classroom, battlefield, and sanctuary. Omar teaches his men the art of moving like shadows, striking and vanishing before the enemy can grasp the wind. They learn the language of the dunes, which rocks to use for cover, which ridges hide their movement, how to ride for hours without leaving tracks. Even the wind itself becomes an ally, carrying their whispers, masking their approach. These lessons are not for glory, they are survival, an ancient wisdom passed down through generations of desert shepherds, now repurposed for war. Word reaches the Italian commanders. A resistance is forming in the heart of Cyrenaica. Governor Graziani grows impatient, his face tight with anger, his boots stamping the polished floors of his headquarters in Benghazi. He issues orders: hunt them, destroy their villages, and bring the desert to heel. But Omar is not a man who can be cornered. He moves through the sand like a ghost, leading his men on raids that strike with precision and vanish like whispers on the wind. Villagers call his name in hope. Soldiers call it in fear. The Lion of the Desert. Their first major ambush comes at dawn, along a narrow wadi. Italian trucks, laden with soldiers and supplies, crawl between ridges, unaware of the eyes watching from above. Omar signals his men with subtle hand gestures, barely perceptible. Then the desert erupts, rocks rolling down, gunfire cracking through the air, dust and smoke billowing. Italian troops scramble, chaos overtaking their formation. In the heart of the ambush, Omar rides like the wind, calm as a desert night, directing his men with perfect precision. The ambush succeeds, but at a cost. One of Omar's young fighters falls, caught in crossfire. He lies among the sand, eyes wide with fear and awe, as Omar dismounts, cradling him gently. "Do not mourn," Omar whispers, voice steady yet heavy with emotion. "We fight so they may live free." That day, victory tastes bitter. The desert is both their ally and their judge, impartial and unforgiving. News of the ambush spreads across Cyrenaica like wildfire. Tribes send messengers, their words carrying hope and defiance. Omar's camp grows, with new recruits arriving on camels and horses, men and women bringing provisions, prayers, and determination. Yet, with growth comes risk. Italian forces double their patrols, seeking to crush this rising force before it becomes a legend. The desert holds Omar's secret: hidden trails, caves, and dry riverbeds that only those born to its sands can traverse. But the net tightens. Nights are filled with strategy and prayer. Omar gathers his lieutenants inside a cave. Maps of the surrounding desert spread on rocks, candlelight flickering across determined faces. They plan raids, escapes, and supply routes with meticulous care, knowing every mistake could cost lives. "If they close every path," Omar whispers, tracing lines in the sand, "the sky will still be ours." Outside, the desert hums, echoing his words like a promise to the wind. Skirmishes multiply across the land, raids on Italian supply lines, ambushes on patrols, sabotage of bridges and communications. Omar's men move like whispers, leaving no trace but fear. Yet every victory draws attention. Italian reinforcements arrive with guns, planes, and barbed wire stretching across valleys, attempting to trap the desert itself. Omar adapts, teaching his men to flow like water, striking where least expected, vanishing into the sand as if the desert had swallowed them whole. The desert roars under the relentless sun, but Omar Mukhtar and his fighters are unbowed. Every ridge, every wadi, every hidden canyon becomes both shield and weapon. Italian convoys, once confident, now move cautiously, eyes scanning the sand for shadows that may not exist. Omar rides ahead, scanning the horizon, eyes narrowed, ears tuned to the faintest whisper of movement. He knows the desert as no outsider could. Every rock, every gust of wind, every shifting dune a part of his plan. War has transformed the quiet teacher into a master of shadows, the lion whose roar echoes silently across the sands. Ambushes come like whispers of death. Omar positions his men along narrow passes, where the enemy is forced to move like prey, trapped between rocks. They strike swiftly. Rifles crack, smoke rises, horses neigh, and the Italians falter. Victory is swift but brutal. The desert swallows the chaos, leaving behind only the wind and the scent of gunpowder. Omar walks among his fighters afterward, checking wounds, offering comfort, and ensuring morale remains unbroken. Courage, he teaches, is as much about heart as it is about skill. The Italians retaliate with fire and steel. Barbed wire fences stretch across valleys, designed to trap and suffocate freedom. Poisoned wells turn life-giving water into death. Planes roar overhead, casting shadows like harbingers of doom. But Omar adapts. He teaches his men to read the patterns of the enemy, to strike when least expected, to vanish into the dunes as if the desert had claimed them. Every obstacle becomes a lesson, every threat an opportunity, every loss a spark for courage. Betrayal lurks in the shadows. Spies, coerced villagers, and traitors threaten to unravel everything Omar has built. Yet his wisdom and patience turn potential disaster into advantage. He plants misinformation, anticipates enemy movements, and uses deception like a sculptor shaping clay. Even when surrounded, his men are never lost. Every step, every tactic, every strike has purpose. The desert itself seems to follow his will, guiding him, shielding him, whispering secrets only he can hear. Months pass. The war intensifies. Omar moves his forces from ridge to ridge, village to village, always a step ahead. Supplies are scarce, water rarer still. Yet his men endure, inspired by faith, loyalty, and the courage that flows from their leader. They sleep beneath stars, wake with the sun, ride with the wind. Every action, every decision, every prayer binds them together in a brotherhood forged in sand and blood. Italy cannot crush what cannot be contained. Omar Mukhtar is no longer a man. He is a symbol, a force of nature, the embodiment of resistance. One morning, the desert trembles under the roar of Italian reinforcements. Trucks and tanks advance, armored columns breaking over sand dunes, planes buzzing overhead like locusts. Omar does not panic. He rides along ridges, signaling ambush points, timing every movement with meticulous precision. The first clash is sudden, devastating. Rifles crack, dust rises, and the Italians falter against the cunning and knowledge of the desert. Victory is not measured in numbers, but in survival and the will to continue the fight. And Omar's men endure. Days blur into weeks. Omar's strategies evolve, blending spiritual guidance with military genius. He encourages prayer before each strike, reflection after every battle. We fight not only with rifles, he reminds his men, but with faith, patience, and the courage to endure what others cannot. Each skirmish strengthens their resolve, each loss deepens their commitment, and each victory whispers to the desert that the lion cannot be tamed. But the desert, for all its vastness, cannot protect them forever. Italian forces learn, adapt, and tighten their grip. Omar faces betrayal within his own ranks, spies reporting to the enemy, villages coerced into silence. Yet he remains unbroken, teaching his men to see beyond fear, to strike with patience, and to move like ghosts. Every day is a test, every night a reflection, every dune a lesson in endurance. And still, the lion of the desert roars. The desert burns hotter than ever. Italian forces advance in overwhelming numbers, armored trucks and planes slicing through sand and sky. Yet Omar's men remain elusive, shadows among shadows. But victory comes at a cost. Villages are razed, wells poisoned, families torn apart. The cries of innocence weigh heavily on Omar's heart. He moves among his fighters, whispering prayers of resilience, his presence a calm center amid chaos. Do not fear their steel, he tells them. Fear only the loss of faith, for faith can move mountains, even in the desert. The lion's roar echoes silently across valleys, carried by wind and whispered hope. Betrayal strikes when least expected. Some villagers, coerced by fear or promises of survival, reveal hidden paths to the Italians. An ambush turns against Omar's fighters. Chaos and gunfire erupt, the desert swallowing cries and dust alike. Omar, though wounded in spirit, remains composed. He rallies his men, guiding them through rocky ridges and dry riverbeds to escape the trap. Every betrayal strengthens his resolve. Every obstacle becomes a lesson in patience, strategy, and endurance. The months drag on, each day a battle between courage and survival. Omar moves like a phantom across the desert, teaching, leading, praying. His men follow not because of fear, but because of respect and devotion. His name becomes legend, whispered from village to village, from oasis to oasis. The lion of the desert rides again. Villagers murmur, a spark of hope in their eyes. And yet, the enemy learns, adapts, and grows more ruthless with every encounter. Then comes the fateful day. Omar Mukhtar, betrayed by a guide seeking favor with the Italians, is surrounded. His men fight valiantly, but overwhelming firepower and cunning trap him. He dismounts, unarmed yet unbroken, eyes meeting the enemy with unflinching courage. The desert watches silently, a witness to the capture of its lion. I die, but the desert lives, Omar whispers, a prayer more than a surrender. The wind carries his words across dunes, a testament of faith and defiance. Imprisonment follows swiftly. The lion, once free among dunes, is now shackled, led through dust-choked streets to a fortified prison. Guards, armed and wary, cannot comprehend the calm that radiates from him. Fellow prisoners whisper his name in reverence. Even the oppressors, seeing his unwavering dignity, feel a tremor of respect and unease. Omar's spirit is not caged. The desert still flows in his heart, every star a witness to his endurance. The trial is swift, a theater of injustice. Italian officials speak of law and order. Omar speaks only of faith, justice, and the rights of his people. I am a teacher, a servant of God, he declares. I fight for my people's freedom, nothing else. The court murmurs, Soldiers stiffen. The desert outside remains indifferent. His sentence is death, yet he accepts it with unwavering calm. The lion's roar is silent but unbroken. The desert seems to weep as he is led to the execution ground. The sun beats down, relentless and indifferent. Yet Omar Mukhtar walks with dignity. Every step a testament to courage. Villagers watch from afar, tears in their eyes, hearts swelling with pride and sorrow. The Italian rifles fire. The end comes, but the legend is immortal. The lion's roar echoes in the wind, across dunes, through generations. His spirit cannot be bound by chains or bullets. And so, under the scorching sun of Cyrenaica, Omar Mukhtar's name is etched not in marble, but in the hearts of a nation. He taught that courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph of spirit. The desert keeps his story. The winds whisper it to every child, every fighter, every believer. The lion of the desert lives, not in flesh, but in legend, in faith, and in the unyielding will of those who dare to rise. And this is Ancient Historian's Voyage, where forgotten heroes rise again. If you found this story of courage and faith inspiring, share it with fellow history lovers. Subscribe for more journeys into the past, and let the legends of the ancient world guide your spirit.